So it's been quite a while since I've made a video, and there's a pretty good reason for that. There are actually many good reasons for that. I finally started work on a project I've wanted to do for over a decade now, a little thing I call Project 303, and I'll get into what that is, why it exists, whether or not it was worth it, and why I named it what I did. The first thing to understand is that this is not a brand or anything that's going to be up for sale. It's not something I'm doing for money. This has been purely a passion project from the word go. So the idea behind this was that about 10 years ago I found a really good deal on a couple of used drum kits made by Pacific Drums and Percussion, which is like Drum Workshop's kind of offshoot, more affordable little brother. And I found these kits for a good deal, and I bought them with the intention of eventually stripping the hardware off of them and building a couple of drum kits that had the same matching color and everything like that in a couple of different size configurations, along with a few add-ons, the end result of which would give me kind of a drum library or a shell bank. Part of this was because of the limitations that existed within the Pacific lineup at the time. They were only basically making a relative handful of basic drum sizes, which they're all fine on their own, but I wanted something a little different that I couldn't get off the factory floor. The other thing that this was inspired by was that earlier on, before I found these drum kits, Pacific had made a series called the 805 series, where there were a couple of different kit configurations that were done up in unusual finishes and powder-coated hardware and things like that. And I really wanted to buy into these things and get both of the kits and kind of do what I've done now. But it would have required a lot of very custom extra work in order to get a few other things, and I simply didn't have the money for it at the time. So I kind of had to abandon all hope, and of course by the time I did have enough money for something like that, they were no longer in production. That's where the name Project 303 comes from, is the 805 series, which 805 I believe is the area code for Oxnard, California, where DW is located. And of course I'm nowhere near California. Here in Denver, you know, the area code is 303, so that kind of gave me a little bit of a connection to what inspired this whole project to begin with. So the basic idea for this construct was that I wanted to do like the 805 and have two basic drum kits. You know, this was kind of a, if I was in charge, what would I do? Well, what I came up with was a small kit and a large kit. The small kit configuration being a 10, 13, and 16-inch tom-toms with a 20-inch bass drum and a 13-inch snare drum, and then the large configuration being 12, 15, and 18-inch tom-toms with a 24-inch bass drum and a 14-inch snare drum. And then I had enough for some add-ons, 6-inch and 8-inch add-on tom-toms, a 14-inch floor tom of some description, or a rack tom. I didn't know which one I wanted to do at the time. And I had some bass drum hardware that I could use to make a 16-inch bass drum. So the plan was to buy the appropriate sized shells from Keller Plywood, pick a finish. You know, I spent many years just trying to decide on what the finish was going to be. Then it was time to get to work. Now, along the way, because this took a decade, I ended up finding good deals on other used Pacific drum kits, and as I got more and more of these things, I started adding drums to the roster to the point that it has ballooned into a, like, I think 35 drums project involving like 5 different snare drums, 7 bass drums, I think like 10 rack toms, 6 piccolo toms, 6 floor toms. I mean, it's just, it has really gone on beyond zebra here, which is fine. That gives me this great big master shell bank, but it has far exceeded its original scope of just emulating the 805 series. And hopefully I can stop myself before the insanity takes over. The why of all of this is because, number one, I like to build things. Okay, you can call me a musician or an artist or a composer, but fundamentally, I'm a builder. I built my own desk. I built half the walls in the place I'm sitting in right now. I built my own drums. You look at my primary channel is about building model railroads. I mean, that's what I like to do. I like to slap things together. I built my own computer that we're recording this on right now. That was part of the interest in doing the project, regardless of what it cost me. I would compare it to if you were into hot rods. You know, back in the day, you could get somebody like Boyd Coddington or Chip Foose to build you a custom hot rod, and it would cost you a fabulous amount of money. And you would have a hot rod, and it would perform well, I'm sure, and all that goodness. Or you could find yourself an old T-bucket and build the sucker yourself. And I chose to go the latter route. You know, yeah, DW can make me a custom bespoke drum kit with all the bells and whistles and all the trimmings. Or, you know, I could take some affordable used drum kits and hot rod the kit myself. So that's the route that I chose. That's kind of the why of this. The other part, as I had alluded to earlier, is that this was kind of an experiment in what if I was the one in charge of this? How would this shake out? It's been fun since I've got most of the drums completed. I've been able to kind of A/B test some things and try out some things. I've been able to answer some questions I've always wanted to kind of answer within the technical realm of drums, drum building, and putting together a drum kit. That has been fun and interesting, and I think as those topics are relevant, I'll make videos about that. Now the final question: was it worth it? It was 10 years ago when I started this project. For what I've managed to get out of this, for what I would recommend anybody could get out of this, it could be done now very easily with the current lineup of Pacific Concept Series drums. They've adjusted the line enough over the years that if you buy strategic kit configurations within the lineup, like in terms of individual drums, you can kind of get one of each and use that as the basis for your shell bank and be able to put together pretty much any configuration you can think of, with very few exceptions to what I've built. So if I were starting this all over again today, I would just buy PDP Concept drums and then deal with the need to build whatever add-ons are missing from what I've put together here. On the other hand, it is still worth it in the sense that what I have is unlike anything else. There does not exist another Pacific oval lug drum kit like this one. And, you know, I deliberately chose a finish that was never offered in the Pacific catalog, which is the turquoise oyster, and did little things like making the bass drum hoops a brown stain finish instead of trying to match it to the shell finish. You know, give it a little bit of contrast, which is good because there's a lot of drums there, and that much turquoise can be hard on the eyes. So contrasting it with a warmer color like a caramel brown, and later on adding some red highlights to things, really kind of helped give this kit a look that I'm pretty pleased with. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily do it the same way again, but I'm not sad about what I did either. So so that's Project 303, and now I theoretically never need to buy another drum kit ever again. Yeah, you'll never need to buy another drum kit again. Yeah, that's a good one. Anyway, so that's Project 303. I'm Mike Lindsay. Thanks for coming out.